Hey family, Pastor Willingham here. It is day 66. Let's talk about calling. Let's talk about calling and what it means to be called, and understanding that everyone has a calling, not just pastors, not just people who are have titles in ministry, but every individual has a calling. And do we know our calling? Do we know our calling? Have we had a calling experience? And perhaps here, looking at uh, Exodus 3rd chapter, verses 1 through 4, it gives us a description of a calling experience of Moses. And perhaps through it, we may be able to understand how God is trying to call us. As the story is here, it says that Moses kept a flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian. And he led the flock, it says here, to the backside of the desert. And it came to a mountain, the mountain of God, even Horeb. And the angel of the Lord appeared unto him in a flame of fire out of the midst of the bush. And he looked and beheld the bush burned with fire, and the bush was not consumed. And so God is showing him something unusual here, that a thing can be on fire and not be consumed. And it gets the attention of Moses. And sometimes God will put something before us unusual, just to see first, are we paying attention? Are we aware? There are many ways that God tries to get our attention and show us something unusual that can only be of God, to see if we indeed are attentive. And sometimes maybe we're missing the connection with God, and we're missing the way God is trying to guide us in our calling, because we're not being attentive. And so the bush was on fire, but the bush was not consumed. And Moses said, I will now turn aside and see this great sight, why the bush is not burnt. How can this bush be on fire and not burn? And in some ways, it's symbolic for our life, for our journey with God. Moses had been through so many things. He ran from Pharaoh, and he fought off the people at the well, protecting the 7 daughters in Midian. He fought for the Hebrews. He even challenged Hebrews for fighting one another. He'd been put in a small ark when his mother released him. And through all of these fires, the life of Moses had been on fire, but God had not allowed it to be consumed. And certainly we can say the same thing. Think on all the things that you've been through that could have destroyed you, and yet God allows you not to be destroyed. And so now Moses said, I'll turn aside and now see this great sight, why the bush is not burning. When the Lord saw that he turned aside to see, when God saw that he was being attentive, God called him out of the midst of the bush and said, Moses, Moses. And he said, here am I. And so, is God calling to you? Is God speaking to you? Is there a way that God's trying to get your attention? And have you been paying attention? And more importantly, have you responded to the way that God is trying to call you? And so think on these things today about your calling. And I thank you again for listening. And I ask you to subscribe and share this information with someone whom you love, whose life you may be able to help change. Have a great rest of your day, and I'll talk to you soon. God bless. Bye-bye.